The year is 1980. A young pastor named Joel Osteen sits in a cramped television studio in Houston, Texas, watching his father John deliver a sermon to a handful of cameras. The production is modest, almost amateur by today's standards, broadcast to maybe a few thousand viewers across the local area. Fast forward to 2024, and Joel Osteen commands an audience of over 10 million television viewers each week, fills the former home of the Houston Rockets with 16,000 worshipers every Sunday, and maintains a social media following that rivals Hollywood's biggest stars. His estimated net worth? Somewhere north of $100 million. Something extraordinary has happened to the American pulpit over the past 4 decades. Pastors who once served small congregations and lived modest lives now command massive media empires, sell millions of books, and wield influence that extends far beyond the church walls. They've become brands, celebrities, and in some cases, cultural phenomena that transcend religious boundaries entirely. But this transformation didn't happen overnight, and it certainly didn't happen by accident. To understand how we arrived at this moment, we need to journey back to a time when television was still finding its voice, when religion was largely confined to Sunday morning services, and when the very idea of a pastor becoming a household name seemed almost blasphemous to many believers. The story begins not in a church, but in a small radio station in Portsmouth, Ohio, where a charismatic young preacher named Pat Robertson was about to change everything. Robertson purchased a struggling UHF television station in 1961 for $37,000, a sum that today seems almost laughably small. He called it the Christian Broadcasting Network, and his vision was audacious for its time. While most religious programming consisted of staid, formal presentations, Robertson created something entirely different. He hosted a talk show format called The 700 Club, complete with news segments, interviews, and a more conversational approach to discussing faith. It was revolutionary. But Robertson wasn't operating in a vacuum. The 1960s and 70s witnessed a perfect storm of cultural and technological changes that would make the celebrity pastor phenomenon not just possible, but inevitable. Television ownership exploded across America, growing from 9% of households in 1950 to over 90% by 1970. Suddenly, anyone with access to broadcast equipment could potentially reach millions of homes simultaneously. At the same time, American society was experiencing profound upheaval. The counterculture movement, Vietnam War protests, and changing social norms left many Americans feeling spiritually adrift. Traditional institutions were being questioned, and people were hungry for authentic voices that could speak to their deeper needs. Into this spiritual marketplace stepped a new breed of religious entrepreneur. Jimmy Swaggart understood this hunger intimately. Growing up in poverty in Louisiana, he experienced firsthand the struggles that many Americans faced. When he began his television ministry in the 1970s, he brought an emotional intensity and raw authenticity that resonated powerfully with audiences. His crusades weren't just religious services, they were emotional experiences that combined music, healing, and dramatic testimonials. By the 1980s, his weekly television program reached more households than most primetime entertainment shows. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. The very success of these early television evangelists contained the seeds of their own transformation from spiritual leaders into something approaching entertainment figures. The economics of television broadcasting demand constant content, rising production values, and ever-growing audiences to justify advertising revenue and viewer donations. This created an unprecedented pressure on religious leaders to become performers. Rex Humbard pioneered many of the techniques that would define modern religious broadcasting. His ministry, based in Akron, Ohio, was among the first to understand that successful television required more than just good preaching. It required storytelling, emotional arcs, and production values that could compete with secular programming. Humbard's services featured orchestras, professional lighting, and carefully choreographed presentations that borrowed heavily from variety show formats. The transformation accelerated throughout the 1980s with the rise of what became known as the prosperity gospel. This theological movement suggested that faith, properly exercised, would result in material blessing. It was a message perfectly suited to the optimistic, consumer-driven culture of Reagan-era America, and it provided a theological justification for pastors to live lavishly while asking their followers to give generously. Oral Roberts embodied this shift perhaps more dramatically than anyone else. Roberts had begun his ministry in the traditional Pentecostal tradition, focusing on divine healing and spiritual gifts. But by the 1980s, he was promising his followers that their financial contributions would result in miraculous returns. His seed faith theology suggested that donations to his ministry were investments that God would multiply back to the giver. It was a revolutionary idea that fundamentally changed the relationship between pastor and congregation. The controversy wasn't long in coming. In 1987, Roberts claimed that God would call him home if he didn't raise $8 million by a specific deadline. The incident generated enormous media attention, much of it negative, but it also demonstrated something crucial about the new landscape of American religion. Controversy, it turned out, could be just as powerful as inspiration in building and maintaining audiences. That same year brought the downfall of two of the most prominent television evangelists. Jim Bakker's PTL ministry collapsed amid financial scandals and personal moral failures, while Jimmy Swaggart faced his own highly publicized scandals. The media coverage was intense and unforgiving, but something fascinating happened in the aftermath. Rather than destroying the celebrity pastor phenomenon, these scandals actually strengthened it by creating a demand for more polished, media-savvy leaders who could avoid such pitfalls. Enter a new generation of pastors who had studied these early successes and failures carefully. They understood that sustained celebrity required not just spiritual authority, but also media sophistication, brand management, and careful cultivation of public image. Rick Warren, founding pastor of Saddleback Church in California, represented this new breed perfectly. Warren's approach was methodical and strategic in ways that earlier evangelists had never imagined. He studied demographic data to understand exactly who his potential audience was, then crafted messages specifically designed to appeal to their needs and concerns. When he wrote The Purpose-Driven Life in 2002, it wasn't just a book. It was a carefully orchestrated media campaign that included television appearances, speaking tours, and coordinated church programs across the country. The book became one of the best-selling nonfiction titles in American history, selling over 30 million copies. But Warren's success was only the beginning. By the early 2000s, technology was once again reshaping the landscape in ways that would make even greater celebrity possible. The internet, satellite television, and eventually social media created opportunities for religious leaders to build personal brands that extended far beyond their local congregations or even their television programs. Joel Osteen emerged as perhaps the most successful example of this new model. When he reluctantly took over Lakewood Church following his father's death in 1999, Osteen brought a background in television production rather than traditional theological training. This proved to be exactly what the moment required. His messages were carefully crafted to be uplifting without being challenging, spiritual without being divisive, and broadly appealing to audiences regardless of their specific religious background. Before we continue exploring this fascinating transformation, I'm curious about something. Where are you watching this from right now, and what time is it where you are? Are you someone who works in media, ministry, or perhaps you're experiencing religion from an entirely different perspective? The global reach of these celebrity pastors means their influence extends far beyond American borders, and I'd love to know how this story resonates with viewers around the world. I'm Professor Archive, and this channel is dedicated to uncovering the hidden stories behind the cultural phenomena that shape our world. If you're finding value in this deep dive into the making of celebrity pastors, consider subscribing. We explore everything from political movements to entertainment industry secrets, always with the goal of understanding how individual personalities can reshape entire cultural landscapes. The success of pastors like Osteen revealed something profound about American spiritual hunger in the 21st century. Traditional religious institutions were losing membership and cultural influence, but there remained a deep desire for meaning, community, and hope. Celebrity pastors filled this void by offering spiritual content that felt personal, accessible, and relevant to contemporary life. T.D. Jakes exemplifies how this formula could be adapted across different communities and cultural contexts. As an African American pastor building a predominantly black megachurch in Dallas, Jakes faced unique challenges and opportunities. His theatrical preaching style, combined with shrewd business acumen, allowed him to build an empire that includes not only his church and television ministry, but also books, films, and even secular entertainment ventures. His annual Woman Thou Art Loosed conferences became cultural events that attracted thousands of participants and generated millions in revenue. The financial scale of these ministries is staggering and often controversial. Kenneth Copeland, whose ministry began in the 1960s, now oversees an organization with assets estimated at over $700 million. His personal wealth includes multiple private jets, luxury homes, and a lifestyle that would be familiar to any Fortune 500 CEO. When questioned about his wealth, Copeland argues that his success demonstrates God's blessing on his ministry and provides him with the resources necessary to reach a global audience. This prosperity has inevitably attracted scrutiny from both religious and secular critics. Senator Chuck Grassley led a congressional investigation into the finances of several prominent television ministries, questioning whether organizations claiming tax-exempt religious status should be generating such enormous personal wealth for their leaders. The investigation revealed financial practices that blurred the lines between personal enrichment and religious mission in ways that earlier generations of religious leaders could never have imagined. But criticism has done little to slow the celebrity pastor phenomenon. If anything, it has encouraged even more sophisticated approaches to building and maintaining public profiles. Joyce Meyer represents perhaps the most successful female example of this trend. Her ministry generates over $100 million annually through television broadcasts, book sales, and speaking engagements. Meyer's message focuses heavily on personal empowerment and positive thinking, themes that resonate powerfully with contemporary audiences, seeking both spiritual and practical guidance for their daily lives. The rise of social media has accelerated these trends beyond anything previous generations could have anticipated. Pastor Stephen Furtick of Elevation Church in North Carolina has built a massive following through Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, where his inspirational quotes and lifestyle content reach millions of followers daily. His approach represents a fundamental shift from traditional religious authority, where spiritual leadership was based on theological training and institutional position, to a more entrepreneurial model where success is measured by audience size and cultural influence. Carl Lentz took this social media approach even further during his time as pastor of Hillsong Church's New York location. Lentz cultivated relationships with celebrities like Justin Bieber and the Kardashians, appearing regularly in tabloid magazines and entertainment media. His carefully curated Instagram presence showcased a lifestyle that was both spiritually minded and undeniably cool, attracting young urban audiences who might never have considered entering a traditional church. When Lentz was fired from Hillsong in 2020 following moral failures, the story dominated entertainment news in ways that demonstrated how completely the lines between religious leadership and celebrity culture had blurred. The Hillsong phenomenon itself represents one of the most significant developments in contemporary religious celebrity culture. Founded in Australia by Brian Houston, Hillsong expanded globally by treating church planting like franchise development, complete with standardized branding, professional music production, and carefully trained leaders who could replicate the Hillsong experience across different markets. Their worship music became a global industry unto itself, generating millions in revenue and making Hillsong artists into celebrities within both Christian and secular music markets. But perhaps no one has mastered the intersection of technology, celebrity, and spirituality quite like Pastor Craig Groeschel of Life Church in Oklahoma. Groeschel pioneered the use of video technology to broadcast his sermons simultaneously to multiple campuses, creating a church experience that feels both intimate and massive. His YouVersion Bible app has been downloaded over 500 million times, making him arguably the most influential pastor in the world in terms of daily spiritual impact on ordinary people's lives. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated these technological trends in ways that may have permanently changed religious practice in America. When traditional church services became impossible, pastors who had already built strong digital presences found themselves at enormous advantages. Austeen's online services attracted larger audiences than ever before, while pastors without sophisticated media operations struggled to maintain connection with their congregations. This shift has raised profound questions about the nature of religious community and spiritual authority. Can genuine spiritual relationship exist through a screen? Does the celebrity pastor model, with its emphasis on charismatic individual leaders and professional production values, enhance or diminish authentic religious experience? These questions become particularly acute when considering the financial relationships between celebrity pastors and their audiences. The giving patterns associated with celebrity ministries often bear more resemblance to fan culture than traditional religious tithing. Followers don't just support their local congregation, they invest emotionally and financially in the personal brands of individual pastors. When scandals occur, as they inevitably do, the damage extends far beyond institutional reputation to impact thousands or even millions of personal relationships with spiritual authority figures. Paula White's role as spiritual advisor to President Donald Trump illustrates how celebrity pastor status can translate into direct political influence. White, whose ministry built a substantial following through television broadcasts and prosperity gospel messaging, found herself at the center of American political power in ways that would have been unimaginable for religious leaders in previous generations. Her prayers at political rallies and presence in the White House demonstrated how completely the celebrity pastor phenomenon had penetrated mainstream American culture. The international expansion of American celebrity pastors represents another fascinating dimension of this story. Joel Osteen's books have been translated into dozens of languages, and his television program reaches over 200 countries. Joyce Meyer conducts massive conferences across Africa, Asia, and Latin America, often drawing larger crowds than secular entertainment figures. This global reach has created a form of American religious soft power that operates entirely through market mechanisms rather than institutional missionary efforts. Yet this international success has also revealed the cultural specificity of the American celebrity pastor model. Attempts to directly replicate the prosperity gospel message in contexts of extreme poverty have generated controversy and criticism. The promise that faith will lead to material blessing takes on different meanings in societies where basic survival remains uncertain for large portions of the population. The psychological appeal of celebrity pastors operates on multiple levels that extend well beyond traditional religious motivation. In an increasingly fragmented and individualistic society, these figures provide both inspiration and parasocial relationship opportunities that fulfill deep human needs for community and guidance. Their carefully crafted personal brands offer followers a sense of connection to success, optimism, and meaning that may be missing from other aspects of their lives. Research into the demographics of celebrity pastor audiences reveals fascinating patterns. These ministries tend to attract middle-class individuals who are economically stable, but may be experiencing spiritual or emotional uncertainty. The prosperity gospel message particularly resonates with people who have enough resources to make significant donations, but still face financial pressures or aspirations for greater success. The production values associated with modern celebrity pastor ministries rival those of major entertainment companies. Lakewood Church's weekly service involves dozens of professional musicians, sophisticated lighting and video systems, and carefully choreographed presentations that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce. This investment in excellence contributes to the appeal but also represents a fundamental shift in how religious authority operates in contemporary culture. Critics argue that this emphasis on production value and entertainment necessarily diminishes authentic spiritual content. When pastors must maintain audience engagement across multiple media platforms, the pressure to be entertaining can override commitments to theological depth or challenging moral instruction. The result, according to these critics, is a form of spiritual fast food that provides immediate satisfaction, but little long-term nourishment. Supporters counter that these same production values and celebrity appeal allow important spiritual messages to reach audiences who would never contact conventional religious institutions. By meeting people where they are culturally and technologically, Celebrity pastors can introduce spiritual concepts and community opportunities that might otherwise remain inaccessible to modern Americans. The business model underlying celebrity pastor ministries has evolved into something approaching sophisticated media conglomerates. Revenue streams include not only traditional donations and television advertising, but also book publishing, speaking fees, licensing agreements, and merchandise sales. Some ministries have moved into real estate development, creating Christian-themed residential communities and commercial developments that generate ongoing income independent of spiritual programming. This diversification has created financial sustainability that allows celebrity pastors to weather controversies and cultural changes that might have destroyed earlier religious leaders. When faced with criticism or scandal, these figures can rely on multiple income sources and loyal audiences that provide insulation from broader cultural disapproval. The next generation of religious leaders is already emerging with even more sophisticated understanding of digital media, personal branding, and audience development. Pastors like Judah Smith of Church Home in Seattle represent a new breed that has never known religious leadership without social media, global connectivity, and celebrity culture. Their approach to ministry assumes from the beginning that spiritual authority must be built and maintained through multiple platforms and constant engagement with audience expectations. Young pastors entering ministry today receive training that would have been unimaginable to previous generations. Bible schools and seminaries now offer courses in social media strategy, television production, and brand management alongside traditional theological education. The assumption is that effective spiritual leadership in contemporary culture requires many of the same skills as entertainment industry success. This raises profound questions about what American religion is becoming and where these trends might lead. If current patterns continue, we may be witnessing the emergence of a spiritual landscape dominated by a relatively small number of celebrity figures with enormous individual followings, while traditional denominational structures and local pastoral authority continue to decline in influence. The implications extend far beyond religion into broader questions about authority, community, and cultural formation in democratic society. Celebrity pastors wield influence over millions of Americans on questions ranging from personal morality to political engagement to economic behavior. Unlike elected officials or traditional institutional leaders, they face no systematic accountability mechanisms beyond market forces and voluntary regulatory organizations. Yet these leaders continue to grow in influence and cultural prominence, suggesting that they fulfill genuine needs within contemporary American society. Their success reveals both the spiritual hunger and the technological possibilities that define our historical moment. Understanding their rise provides insight not only into American religion, but into how individual charisma, media technology, and economic opportunity can combine to create entirely new forms of cultural authority. As we've seen throughout this exploration, the transformation of American pastors into celebrities represents one of the most significant religious developments of the past half-century. It reflects broader changes in how authority operates in democratic societies, how technology reshapes human relationships, and how spirituality adapts to consumer culture. The story is far from over. New technologies like virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and blockchain economics will likely create even more dramatic possibilities for religious entrepreneurs willing to embrace innovation. The pastors who become tomorrow's celebrities may look very different from today's figures, but they will almost certainly build on the foundation of media sophistication, personal branding, and audience development that current leaders have established. Whether this represents progress or decline in American spiritual life remains hotly debated, but there's no question that it represents profound change. The humble parish pastor serving a local congregation hasn't disappeared entirely, but he or she now operates in a religious ecosystem dominated by figures whose influence extends far beyond anything previous generations of religious leaders could have imagined. For those of us trying to understand contemporary American culture, the celebrity pastor phenomenon provides crucial insight into how spiritual authority adapts to technological change, economic opportunity, and evolving social expectations. These figures succeed not despite American secular culture, but precisely because they've learned to operate effectively within it while maintaining religious credibility with their audiences. The ultimate question may not be whether celebrity pastors are good or bad for American religion, but rather what their success reveals about the deeper needs and desires of contemporary spiritual seekers. In a society that often feels fragmented and meaningless, these leaders provide community, hope, and purpose for millions of Americans. Understanding their appeal may be essential to understanding ourselves. Their influence will undoubtedly continue to evolve as new technologies emerge and cultural expectations shift. But the basic model they have established seems likely to remain a permanent feature of the American religious landscape. The age of the celebrity pastor is no longer a curiosity or aberration. It has become simply another way that spiritual authority operates in the 21st century. As always, Professor Archive is committed to helping you understand the forces shaping our world, from the obvious to the subtle, from the historical to the contemporary. The story of how American pastors became celebrities illuminates much more than religious change. It reveals how charisma, technology, and cultural need can combine to create entirely new forms of influence and authority. If you found this exploration valuable, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the hidden stories behind the headlines. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep seeking to understand the fascinating complexity of the world we're all trying to navigate together.